Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you were meant to protect? Have you been gaslighted, discarded, manipulated, and still chosen love over revenge? And now you sit in the silence, wondering, did God even see any of it? Or could it be that everything, every betrayal, every sleepless night, every moment you felt forgotten was preparing you for something far greater than you ever imagined? Listen to me carefully. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. They didn't break you down to destroy you. They broke you open to reveal what was always inside, a strength so profound, a light so pure, that it threatened every lie they'd built their life upon. That's why they came for you with such precision. That's why the attacks felt so personal, so calculated, so relentless. They didn't fear your weakness. They feared your awakening. You see, what they buried in pain became your birthplace into power. Every tear you cried in secret, sacred data. Every moment you chose silence over retaliation, divine restraint. Every time you forgave when fury would have been justified, you were being forged in the fires of holiness itself. You weren't the target, you were the test. And beloved, they failed miserably. Your isolation wasn't abandonment, it was protection. Heaven pulled you back from the noise so you could hear the voice that's been calling your name since before you were born. That voice that whispers, "You are mine. You are chosen. You are not forgotten." The pain they inflicted didn't diminish you, it revealed them. While you were growing in grace, they were shrinking in spirit. While you were learning to love without conditions, they were drowning in their own bitterness. And now you're watching this message not by accident, but by divine appointment, because there are truths buried in your story that the world desperately needs to hear. There is healing in your wounds that can mend generations. There is purpose in your pain that can shift the atmosphere for countless others still trapped in the darkness you've already walked through. To those of you supporting this message through super thanks, your generosity isn't just seen, it's sanctified. You're not just giving, you're sowing light into eternity. And whether you give or not, I'm profoundly grateful for your presence here. Your time, your attention, your faith, it all matters more than you know. If this word is stirring something deep in your spirit, something that's been buried but not dead, drop 777 the comments. Let heaven know you're ready to step into the truth of who you've always been beneath the pain. Because what comes next will shift everything you thought you knew about why you were attacked, why you survived, and why you're still here. And now, let's go deeper into the mystery of your magnificent resilience. You were 5 years old when they first tried to convince you that your light was too bright. 7 when they told you to stop asking so many questions. 9 when they said your dreams were unrealistic. By 12, they had you believing that feeling everything so deeply was a curse instead of a gift. They didn't break you because you were broken. They broke you because you were unbreakable. See, what they never told you, what they prayed you'd never figure out, is that the very thing they attacked was the very thing God ordained. Your sensitivity, that was spiritual radar. Your intensity, divine fire. Your inability to accept their shallow explanations, holy discernment cutting through generations of lies. They saw it before you did. That's why they moved so fast, so calculated, so early. You think it was coincidence that the people closest to you were the first to wound you? Child, that was strategy. Spiritual warfare doesn't wait for you to grow up and figure out your power. It strikes while you're still learning to spell your own name, hoping to bury your calling beneath confusion before you even know what calling means. Your childhood wasn't chaotic by accident. It was orchestrated by forces that knew exactly what you'd become if they didn't intervene. They planted seeds of doubt in the fertile soil of your young mind, whispering lies about your worth while your spirit was still forming its foundation. But here's what breaks their game wide open. You survived it. Every gaslighting session, every moment they made you question your reality, every time they convinced you that your pain was your fault, your confusion was your character flaw, your questions were your weakness, you absorbed it all and still kept breathing, still kept seeking, still kept believing there had to be more. That wasn't resilience, beloved. That was prophecy in process. Job was attacked before his breakthrough. Joseph was betrayed before his elevation. David was hunted before his coronation. The pattern is ancient. And you beautiful, wounded warrior, you're walking in that same sacred rhythm. They lied to you early because they saw your destiny early. They couldn't kill what God planted, so they tried to convince you it was never there. They couldn't stop your calling, so they attempted to make you forget you had one. They couldn't dim your light, so they spent decades teaching you to cover it with shame. But every lie they whispered, it was confession of your power. Every wound they inflicted, proof of your purpose. Every moment they tried to make you small, evidence that your true size terrified them. You were attacked before you were aware because the enemy saw what God placed in you. Say it out loud. I am not confused, I was targeted, because I'm chosen. That feeling you carry that deep, knowing that you don't belong in the shallow end of life, that's not alienation, that's activation. You've been set apart not to suffer, but to shift atmospheres. Not to hide, but to heal. Not to shrink, but to shatter every ceiling they built over your head. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom learning to speak with authority. Your tears weren't breakdown. They were breakthrough, preparing to birth something beautiful. Your isolation wasn't rejection. It was protection, pulling you away from voices that would have drowned out the voice that matters most. Every family member who dismissed your dreams was threatened by your vision. Every friend who abandoned you when you started growing was intimidated by your evolution. Every system that rejected you recognized that you weren't built to serve their agenda, you were designed to disrupt it. They needed you small because your largeness exposed their limitations. They needed you confused because your clarity revealed their deception. They needed you broken because your wholeness reminded them of everything they'd compromised to fit in. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Their lies became your liberation. Every false thing they spoke over you created a hunger for truth that nothing counterfeit could satisfy. Every wound they inflicted developed spiritual muscles that ordinary comfort never could have built. Every door they slammed in your face redirected you toward the entrance only you were meant to walk through. You didn't survive their sabotage by accident. You survived it by appointment. Heaven has been protecting what it planted, nurturing what it needs, preparing what it's about to reveal to a world that's been waiting for your specific frequency of light. So stop apologizing for the intensity that intimidated them. Stop dimming the light that blinded their darkness. Stop questioning the calling that called you out of their small circles and into something infinitely larger. You are not too much. You never were. You are exactly enough to do what you came here to do. The enemy saw it early. God saw it earlier. And now finally it's time for you to see it too. The lies they planted are cracking. The truth they tried to bury is breaking through the soil. And what's about to bloom from the garden of your pain will feed generations of souls still starving for the hope you're carrying. Say it one more time. I was not a mistake. I was a message, and it's time to deliver it. Because what they tried to destroy in your beginning is about to explode in your becoming. And that explosion, that beautiful, brilliant, unstoppable explosion, that's what we're about to unleash together. Are you ready to remember who you really are? They called you difficult, said you were too intense, too sensitive, too much. They whispered behind your back that you were dramatic, unstable, always stirring up trouble. But here's the truth they never wanted you to discover. You weren't the problem. You were the revelation. You were the mirror they couldn't handle looking into. Every time you walked into a room, something shifted. Not because you were trying to cause drama, but because your very presence demanded authenticity in a world built on facades. Your energy was like a spiritual X-ray, cutting through the performance, exposing the cracks they'd spent years learning to hide. They didn't hate you. They hated what your light revealed in them. See, when you carry real light, not the artificial glow of social media perfection, but genuine spiritual fire, it does something to the darkness around you. It doesn't destroy it violently. It simply makes it impossible to ignore. And for people who've built their entire identity on staying hidden, on keeping their wounds covered, on maintaining the illusion of having it all together, your presence felt like an invasion. You were the child who asked the questions adults didn't want to answer, the friend who noticed when their smiles didn't reach their eyes, the family member who could feel the tension everyone else pretended wasn't there. You were the one who said out loud what everyone else whispered in their hearts. And that made you dangerous. Not because you were malicious, because you were truthful. Not because you were cruel, because you were clear. In a world where people have mastered the art of surface-level living, your depth felt like drowning to those afraid to go beneath. Remember how they reacted when you started healing? When you began setting boundaries? When you stopped accepting their explanations for inexplicable behavior? The closer you got to wholeness, the more uncomfortable they became. Because your growth highlighted their stagnation, your peace exposed their chaos, your alignment revealed their compromise. Daniel in the lion's den wasn't thrown there because he was weak. He was thrown there because his faithfulness made their faithlessness unbearable. His integrity was a constant reminder of their lack of it. Your spirit works the same way, a living, breathing conviction in human form. You weren't dramatic. You were diagnostic. Your presence exposed what their silence tried to hide. That's why they needed you to be the villain in their story. If you were just difficult, then they didn't have to examine why your presence made them so uncomfortable. If you were just too sensitive, then they didn't have to ask why your sensitivity triggered their defensiveness. If you were just dramatic, then they could dismiss the truth you carried instead of dealing with it. But here's what they never counted on. Mirrors don't lie, and eventually, everyone has to face their reflection. Every accusation they threw at you was actually a confession of what they couldn't face in themselves. When they called you bitter, it was because they couldn't stomach their own resentment. When they labeled you as angry, it was because your controlled response to injustice made their explosive reactions look unstable. When they said you held grudges, it was because your ability to forgive exposed how trapped they were in unforgiveness. You became their scapegoat, not because you were guilty, but because you were free. And freedom in one person always convicts the bondage in another. The same qualities they criticized were the very qualities God was cultivating. Your sensitivity, that was spiritual discernment being refined. Your intensity, divine passion learning to burn with purpose. Your inability to accept surface-level relationships, holy hunger, refusing to be satisfied with counterfeits. Your discomfort with lies, prophetic anointing that couldn't coexist with deception. They needed you broken because your wholeness was a threat to their broken systems. They needed you confused because your clarity would have exposed their manipulation. They needed you silent because your voice carried frequencies that could shatter the glass houses they'd built around their hearts. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. You were never their enemy. You were their opportunity. Every uncomfortable moment you created was an invitation for them to grow. Every truth you spoke was a chance for them to choose authenticity over image. Every boundary you set was an opportunity for them to respect rather than manipulate. Every time you refused to play their games, you offered them the chance to stop playing and start living. Some took it, most didn't, and that's not your burden to carry. Joseph's brothers didn't hate him because he was evil. They hated him because his dreams reminded them of everything they'd stopped believing was possible. Your presence does the same thing. It awakens dormant dreams in people who've convinced themselves that settling is wisdom. Say it out loud. I was not the enemy. I was the evidence. Evidence that healing is possible. Evidence that integrity still exists. Evidence that there are people in this world who choose truth over comfort, depth over surface, authenticity over acceptance. Evidence that you don't have to stay broken just because everyone around you has decided that brokenness is normal. So stop apologizing for being the mirror. Stop dimming your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. Stop shrinking your truth to fit their lies. You were never too much. You were exactly what they needed. They just weren't ready to receive it. But the world is ready now. The world is hungry for the mirror you carry. There are souls out there drowning in facades, desperate for someone to reflect back their authentic selves. There are hearts breaking under the weight of performance, aching for permission to be real. You are that permission. You are that mirror. You are that light. And what they couldn't handle is about to become exactly what this world has been waiting for. Are you ready to stop hiding the very thing that makes you powerful? They walked away from you like you were nothing, left you sitting in rooms that suddenly felt too empty, staring at phones that stopped ringing, wondering what you did wrong. You replayed every conversation, dissected every moment, blamed yourself for being too much, too intense, too real for their comfort zones. But what if I told you they didn't leave because you weren't enough? What if they left because you were too much for their small world to contain? They walked out, but that created space for revelation to walk in. See, you've been mourning departures that were actually deliverances, crying over exits that were actually entrances, grieving losses that were actually gains wrapped in disguises so thick you couldn't see the gift beneath the grief. Every person who couldn't handle your growth was blocking your flow. Every relationship that crumbled under the weight of your evolution was a house built on sand that needed to wash away before the storms of your destiny arrived. Your presence made their masks melt. That's why they scattered like roaches when the lights came on. Your authenticity was an exorcism they couldn't survive. Your truth was a mirror they couldn't face. Your light was a frequency that made their lies start vibrating at dangerous levels. They didn't just leave you, they fled from the reflection of everything they'd refused to become. Remember when Moses came down from the mountain and his face was so bright with God's glory that the people couldn't look at him? That's what happened to you, beloved. You got touched by something so pure, so powerful, that the people around you started feeling exposed just standing in your vicinity. The rejection wasn't about your character, it was about your calling. Every friendship that faded was making room for divine connections. Every door that slammed was redirecting you toward entrances only you were meant to walk through. Every person who said you'd changed was right. You had outgrown the version of yourself they needed you to stay to make them feel secure. But here's where it gets beautiful. Their departure was your deliverance. You thought you were being abandoned, but you were being aligned. You thought you were being rejected, but you were being redirected. You thought you were losing people, but you were losing dead weight that would have drowned you in the depths you're destined to reach. God used their exit to create your entrance. That space they left behind, that wasn't emptiness, that was expansion. That silence they created, that wasn't loneliness, that was preparation for a voice that could only be heard when the noise stopped. That isolation they caused, that wasn't punishment, that was positioning for power they could never handle. Think about Joseph in that pit, betrayed by his own brothers. Think about David hiding in caves, hunted by the very king he'd served. Think about Jesus, denied by Peter, abandoned by disciples who swore they'd never leave. The pattern is ancient and sacred. God's chosen are always separated before they're elevated. Your rejection was your resurrection rehearsal. Every person who walked away was rehearsing for the moment you'd rise so high they couldn't reach you anyway. Every relationship that died was clearing the graveyard for new life to bloom. Every heart that broke was breaking open to hold more love than you ever thought possible. They left because they couldn't fake it under your anointing. Your spirit started demanding authenticity they couldn't afford. Your energy started requiring depth they didn't possess. Your growth started exposing shadows they weren't ready to heal. So they did what people do when confronted with light they can't match, they ran. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Their inability to stay was proof of your ability to soar. Birds don't abandon the nest because it's broken. They leave because it's time to fly. And you, beautiful soul, you've been trying to squeeze wings into spaces built for crawling, wondering why everything felt so cramped, so limiting, so suffocating. The people you lost weren't your people. They were your preparation. They taught you what love looks like when it's conditional. They showed you what support feels like when it's seasonal. They revealed what loyalty means when it's limited. And now you can recognize the real thing when it shows up. Say it with me. I release them. I choose alignment over attachment. Because attachment keeps you tied to what was. Alignment pulls you toward what is. Attachment makes you chase people who've already shown you their capacity. Alignment attracts people who match your frequency without you having to dim yours. Every goodbye was God saying, get ready. Get ready for connections that don't require you to shrink. Get ready for love that doesn't flinch when you shine. Get ready for relationships built on truth instead of tolerance, depth instead of drama, purpose instead of convenience. The revelation came through the rejection because God needed to clear the stage. What's coming next in your life is so powerful, so purposeful, so precisely aligned with your calling that it requires clean space, pure energy, and people who can handle the voltage of your true self without asking you to turn down the power. You didn't lose them, you found yourself. And that self, that beautiful, brilliant, unbreakable self, is exactly what the world has been waiting for. Not the dimmed version they preferred, but the blazing reality they couldn't handle. Their rejection was heaven's protection. Their departure was your arrival. Are you ready to walk through the doors they could never have opened for you? They didn't steal your power. They convinced you to question it. That's the difference between a thief and a manipulator. A thief takes what's yours and runs. A manipulator makes you believe it was never yours to begin with. They whispered doubt into your bloodstream until you started second-guessing the very instincts that were trying to save you. Remember when you knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it? When your gut screamed danger but your mind argued logic? When your spirit felt heavy in certain rooms but you told yourself you were being dramatic? That wasn't paranoia. That was prophecy. Every time you doubted your intuition, they celebrated. Every moment you questioned your reality, they gained control. Every second, you wondered if maybe you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. They carved another piece of your confidence away and fed it to their ego. But here's what they never counted on. Doubt was never your natural state. It was their installation. You came into this world knowing, wide-eyed, fearless, believing in magic and miracles and the impossible becoming possible. They couldn't handle that kind of raw spiritual power walking around in tiny shoes, so they started the programming early. Don't be so sensitive. That's not how the world works. You need to be realistic. Stop asking so many questions. Line by line, lie by lie. They rewrote your spiritual software. They took your divine download and tried to replace it with their limited programming. They convinced you that the voice of God in your chest was just anxiety, that the peace that surpassed understanding was just naive optimism, that the strength that moved mountains was just stubbornness. But you can't upgrade what's already perfect. You can only corrupt it. Every breakdown you had wasn't weakness failing. It was your spirit refusing to accept their counterfeit reality. Every moment you felt like you were losing your mind was actually your soul fighting to keep it. Every time you thought you couldn't trust yourself, your inner compass was spinning because they kept moving the magnetic north of truth. Gideon doubted until the angel called him mighty warrior. Moses questioned until the burning bush wouldn't be ignored. Even John the Baptist sent word from prison asking, "Are you really the one?" Doubt isn't disqualification, it's the battlefield where faith gets forged. Your uncertainty wasn't evidence of your confusion. It was proof of your calling being interrupted. See, they built entire systems designed to keep chosen ones in questioning mode. Schools that reward conformity over creativity. Churches that preach submission over spiritual authority. Families that prioritize peace over truth. Workplaces that crush vision under the weight of "that's not how we do things here." But every time you felt out of place in their places, that was confirmation that you were never meant to fit in their boxes. Every time their words felt foreign on your tongue, that was evidence that you speak a different language, the language of heaven, the dialect of divine possibility. They needed you confused because your clarity was their kryptonite. They needed you uncertain because your confidence would expose their weakness. They needed you questioning everything because if you ever stopped doubting yourself and started doubting them, their whole house of cards would collapse. But guess what? The house is falling down anyway. That voice you've been questioning, it's getting louder. That knowing you've been second-guessing, it's getting stronger. That power you've been doubting, it's breaking through every wall they built to contain it. You're remembering who you were before they told you who you should be. You're reclaiming the voice they tried to silence. You're stepping back into the authority they spent decades convincing you that you didn't have. And it terrifies them, because a chosen one who knows they're chosen, that's unstoppable. A warrior who remembers their weapons, that's unbeatable. A prophet who trusts their prophecy, that changes everything. Every sleepless night, when you wrestled with whether you were crazy or if the world was broken, you were being pulled out of their matrix. Every moment you felt like you didn't belong anywhere, you were being prepared for everywhere. Every season you thought you were falling apart, you were actually being reassembled for something greater. The doubt they planted was designed to keep you small, but all it did was teach you to distinguish between their voice and yours. All it accomplished was making you hunger for truth so deeply that when you finally found it, nothing could shake it loose. So stop apologizing for knowing what you know. Stop questioning what you feel. Stop doubting what burns in your bones. That fire they tried to extinguish, it's an eternal flame. That voice they tried to silence, it echoes from eternity. That power they tried to suppress, it flows from the source that never runs dry. You are not confused. You are awakening. You are not lost. You are being found. You are not broken. You are being broken open so that something infinite can pour through. Say it out loud. I break the doubt. I reclaim my knowing. I trust the God in me more than the fear around me. Because the weapon they used to wound you is about to become the tool that sets you free. The doubt that once crippled you is about to fuel the certainty that changes everything. And that certainty, that unshakable, unmovable, undeniable knowing of who you are and why you're here, that's what we're about to step into together. Are you ready to stop questioning your power and start using it? They thought they buried you, but you were a seed, and this storm was your soil. Look at yourself now, not in the mirror that only shows surface. Look deeper. Feel the difference in your bones, in your breath, in the way you walk into rooms. Something shifted, didn't it? Something ancient awakened. Something that was always there but had to be excavated through pain. You didn't just survive what they threw at you. You metamorphosed. Like a caterpillar that dissolves completely before becoming a butterfly, you had to lose who you thought you were to discover who you actually are. Every betrayal was a cocoon. Every silent night was incubation. Every moment you thought you were dying, you were actually being reborn into something they could never predict or control. You aged like oak, not glass. Time didn't weaken you, it crowned you. See, while they were celebrating what they thought was your destruction, you were undergoing something cosmic. The pressure that should have crushed you crystallized you instead. The fire that should have consumed you refined you. The isolation that should have broken you concentrated you into pure essence. Now, when you walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts before you even speak. Your presence carries weight that wasn't there before. Your silence speaks louder than their noise ever could. You've become a living contradiction to every lie they told about who you were supposed to become. They're studying you now, trying to figure out what happened. How did the person they wrote off become the person they can't write about without trembling? How did their victim become their mystery? Here's what they'll never understand. Chosen ones don't break, they break through. Job didn't just get his possessions back, he got double. Joseph didn't just escape the pit, he became Pharaoh's right hand. David didn't just survive Saul's spears, he inherited the kingdom. The pattern is ancient, and you beautiful. Transformed, you are walking proof that the pattern still holds. You're not the same person who entered that season of suffering. That person had to die for this person to be born. The innocent version of you that trusted blindly had to dissolve so the wise version could emerge who sees clearly. The version that needed everyone's approval had to fade, so the version that needs only heaven's recognition could rise. They gave you darkness, and you turned it into depth. They gave you wounds, and you turned them into wisdom. They gave you silence, and you turned it into strength. Now your very existence is a testimony. Your peace is a prophecy. Your joy is a judgment against everything they said would destroy you. You've become living proof that what's meant for you cannot be taken by human hands, no matter how many of them gather against you. Look at your energy now. Feel how it's changed. You're not chasing validation anymore because you found something deeper than approval. You found your assignment. You're not explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you because you've learned the language that only souls speak. Your glow isn't cosmetic, it's cosmic. This isn't makeup. This is metamorphosis. This isn't a glow up. This is a grow up into dimensions they can't even perceive, let alone access. You became untouchable not through walls, but through wings. Every scar they left became a star map pointing toward your destiny. Every tear they caused became rain that watered seeds they never knew you were planting. Every night they stole became soil for dreams they never imagined you were growing. Now you move different, speak different, love different. You've developed spiritual muscles that only come from carrying weight that would have crushed ordinary souls. You've gained cosmic vision that only comes from seeing through lies that would have blinded normal eyes. The version of you they remember is gone, buried, composted into fertilizer for this new creation. And what grew from that gravesite is something they never calculated, never planned for, never saw coming. You're not who they remember. You're who you were always meant to become. They thought they were watching your ending, but they were witnessing your molting. They thought they were seeing your defeat, but they were observing your metamorphosis. They thought they were burying your future, but they were planting your purpose. Now you're walking around carrying frequencies they can't decode, emanating energies they can't replicate, speaking truths they can't contradict. You've become a walking miracle, a breathing prophecy, a living testament to what happens when heaven refuses to let hell have the final word. Your transformation is so complete that even you sometimes don't recognize the person staring back from your reflection. This isn't the wounded soul they targeted. This isn't the broken spirit they tried to finish. This is resurrection wearing your face. This is renewal carrying your name. This is revelation wrapped in your story. Say it loud. I am not who they remember. I am who I was always meant to become. You've mutated from victim to victor, from survivor to thriver, from wounded to wonderful. And the best part, this is just the beginning of what you're becoming. The mystery isn't who hurt you. The mystery is who you've become despite it all. And that mystery, that beautiful, powerful, unstoppable mystery, is about to solve problems you never knew you were equipped to handle. Are you ready to step fully into the miracle you've become? You didn't have to clap back. You didn't have to expose them. You didn't have to drag their names through the mud or post their secrets on social media. All you did was grow. All you did was glow. And that glow, that beautiful, unstoppable, undeniable glow, it's haunting them in ways they never saw coming. Because you, beloved, you were the karma they didn't see coming. While they were busy plotting your downfall, the universe was orchestrating their correction. While they whispered lies in dark corners, heaven was writing truth in light that would blind their deception. They thought they were playing chess with you, but they were actually playing with forces that don't lose games, they end them. You became their consequence without lifting a finger. See, they expected you to fight dirty. They prepared for your anger, your retaliation, your desperate attempts to clear your name. They had strategies for your breakdown, your bitterness, your revenge tour. What they didn't prepare for was your peace. What they couldn't handle was your silence. What absolutely destroyed them was your decision to heal instead of hurt back. That silence, that wasn't weakness. That was warfare at the highest level. You chose to water your own garden instead of burning down theirs. You chose to build your character while theirs crumbled. You chose to rise while they remained trapped in the same toxic patterns that made them target you in the first place. And that choice, that sacred, powerful choice, it shifted the entire spiritual equation. Joseph didn't have to destroy his brothers. His elevation was their judgment. Esther didn't have to plot against Haman. His own trap became his execution. The pattern is ancient, and you, walking miracle, you're the latest chapter in that holy story. What they mocked, God magnified. What they threw stones at, heaven is now exalting. Remember when they laughed at your sensitivity? Now they're drowning in their own emotions with no one to save them. Remember when they called you crazy for believing in something bigger? Now they're desperately seeking the very spiritual truth they mocked you for embracing. Remember when they said you'd never amount to anything? Now they watch your light from a distance, knowing they forfeited their front row seat to your greatness. You became everything they said you couldn't. You healed from everything they said would break you. You rose from everything they said would bury you. And the most beautiful part? You did it with grace. That grace is what's eating them alive. Not your success, your spirit. Not your achievements, your authenticity. Not your platform, your peace. Because success can be stolen, achievements can be questioned, platforms can be torn down. But peace, grace, a soul that refuses to be poisoned by poison, that's untouchable. That's divine armor they can't penetrate. You are their karma. You are God's correction in motion. Every door that closes on them, that's your elevation, echoing through the spiritual realm. Every relationship that turns sour for them, that's the same energy they put out coming back multiplied. Every night they can't sleep, that's your peace haunting their chaos. You don't have to celebrate their downfall. You don't have to watch their collapse. But you also don't have to pretend it's not happening. The same universe that protected you through their attacks is now protecting others from their toxicity. The same divine justice that held you when they dropped you is now dropping them where they stand. This isn't revenge, beloved. This is restoration. The scales are balancing. The books are being balanced. The spiritual audit they never saw coming is now itemizing every wound they inflicted, every lie they spread, every moment they chose cruelty over compassion. And the payment? It's not coming from your hands. It's flowing from their own choices, their own energy, their own spiritual bankruptcy finally being exposed. Say it with sacred clarity. I am their karma. I am God's correction in motion. You walked away from their games, so the games turned on them. You stopped feeding their drama, so the drama started feeding on them. You removed your light from their darkness, so now they're stuck stumbling in shadows they created. But here's what breaks my heart in the most beautiful way. You're not bitter about it. You're not gloating. You're not celebrating their pain. Because somewhere in your healing journey, you learned the most powerful lesson of all: hurt people, and heal people. You understand now that their attacks were never about you. They were about the emptiness inside them that your fullness exposed. They were about the lies they told themselves that your truth shattered. They were about the smallness they accepted that your largeness challenged. So you pray for them when you think of them. You send love to the broken places in them that created the broken places in others. You hold space for their healing, even while you protect yourself from their harm. Because that's what chosen ones do. We transform poison into medicine, wounds into wisdom, enemies into teachers. You are not their punishment. You are their possibility. Your very existence proves that people can change, can grow, can choose love over fear. Your healing journey is a roadmap for their own, if they ever get tired of being lost. Your peace is an invitation to lay down their weapons if they ever get tired of war. And if they never accept that invitation, that's not your burden to carry anymore. Because you, beautiful soul, you have become the living proof that God's justice isn't about destruction, it's about transformation. And sometimes, the most powerful transformation happens when someone finally learns what it feels like to live without your light. You didn't just survive their darkness, you became the dawn they never saw coming. They thought they were breaking you down, but they were actually breaking you open. Every betrayal, every sleepless night, every moment you sat in that chair wondering if you'd ever feel whole again, they weren't destroying your foundation. They were excavating your gold. See, what they never understood is that diamonds aren't born in comfort. They're forged under pressure so intense it would crush ordinary stones to dust. But you weren't ordinary. You were chosen for compression. They studied how to break you, but they accidentally trained you. Every harsh word was a weightlifting session for your spirit. Every rejection was endurance training for your soul. Every moment they left you standing alone in the storm that wasn't abandonment. That was God teaching you to be your own shelter until you learned you could shelter others. The pain wasn't your punishment, it was your PhD. Remember when they gaslit you until you questioned your own reality? That confusion you felt, that desperate search for truth in a hall of mirrors that developed your spiritual discernment to surgical precision. Now you can spot a lie before it fully forms on someone's lips. Now you can feel deception in a room like smoke in your lungs. They wanted to make you doubt yourself. Instead, they made you trust yourself on levels most people never reach. Remember when they isolated you, made you feel like you were toxic, like something was fundamentally wrong with you? That loneliness carved out space inside your soul's sacred space that nothing counterfeit could ever fill. That emptiness became your sanctuary. That silence became your classroom, where heaven taught you things they don't write in books. Your isolation wasn't rejection, it was selection. Joseph didn't know the pit was preparation for the palace. David couldn't see that the cave was training for the crown. Job had no idea that his suffering was actually God's supreme confidence in his character, because only the strongest can carry the weight of blessing without being corrupted by it. And you, beautiful, broken open, brilliant you've been in the same curriculum. Every person who walked away when you needed them most, they were clearing the stage for the ones who were meant to witness your resurrection. Every door that slammed shut, it was redirecting you toward the entrance only you could walk through. Every dream that seemed to die, it was just hibernating, growing roots in the dark, preparing to bloom with a power that would have been impossible without the underground season. They weren't chiseling your end, they were sculpting your legend. That depression you fought, that wasn't mental illness. That was spiritual labor. You were birthing a version of yourself that could carry light into the darkest places because you'd learned to generate your own luminescence when everyone else's went out. That anxiety that gripped your chest, that was your spirit expanding beyond the boundaries they tried to build around it. Your breakdown wasn't collapse. It was breakthrough disguised as catastrophe. Now you know things they could never teach in seminars. You understand suffering not as theory but as territory you've mapped with your own tears. You've developed emotional muscles most people don't even know exist. You can sit with someone's pain without trying to fix it because you've learned that sometimes healing happens in the holding, not the hurrying. Every wound became a window, every scar became a story, every setback became a setup. They wanted you powerless, so they attacked your confidence. But what they didn't realize is that true power isn't confidence, it's conviction, and conviction only comes through testing. They wanted you voiceless, so they mocked your words. But silence taught you to speak with authority that can't be faked or manufactured, only earned through fire. You know what terrifies them now? Not that you survived. They always knew you were strong. What terrifies them is that you transformed, that you took every weapon they used against you and turned it into wisdom, that you alchemized their hate into your healing, that you didn't just overcome, you overcame with grace. That grace is your greatest revenge and your deepest gift. The empathy that bleeds from your eyes when you see someone hurting that didn't come from reading about pain. That came from PhD-level courses in heartbreak, taught by masters of manipulation who never intended to create a healer. But that's exactly what they did. Your sensitivity, the thing they mocked, called weakness, told you to toughen up about. That's your superpower now. You feel everything because you're meant to heal everything. You carry others' pain because you've learned how to transform it. You're not too much, you're exactly enough for the souls who need someone who understands their language of tears. Say it with me, I was refined, not ruined. Every attack was spiritual refinement, removing everything that wasn't essential, wasn't eternal, wasn't authentically you. They thought they were destroying your identity. They were actually revealing it, stripping away the false self you'd built to please them, exposing the true self that was always meant to change the world. The power was always in the pain. The strength was always in the struggle. The breakthrough was always in the breakdown. They just didn't know they were midwives to your miracle. And now that you know what you've been carrying all along, what are you going to do with this gold they accidentally helped you mine from the depths of your own darkness? Because your pain just became someone else's pathway to freedom. The veil just dropped, and suddenly, everything makes sense. That friend who smiled in your face while spreading poison behind your back? Assignment. That family member who gaslighted you into believing your truth was delusion? Assignment. That coworker who stole your ideas and watched you struggle in silence? Assignment. That pastor who preached love but practiced manipulation? Assignment. God didn't just save you from them, He exposed them through you. See, you thought you were walking through random chaos, but heaven was orchestrating a divine sting operation. Every betrayal was bait, every lie was a trap. Every moment they thought they were playing you, God was playing them. And now the curtain has been ripped clean off, and you can see the whole stage. This is not coincidence. This is divine reckoning. Remember when Pharaoh thought he was drowning Hebrew babies to stop a deliverer? But every dead child only confirmed that the deliverer was coming. The enemy's panic is always proof of your proximity to breakthrough. Their attacks were never random, they were confirmation that your assignment was approaching. You've been walking through a spiritual setup, beloved. Every person who wounded you was positioning themselves for their own exposure. Every lie they told about you became a confession about themselves. Every door they slammed became evidence of their own spiritual bankruptcy. God didn't just protect you, He collected receipts. That depression that tried to swallow you whole, it was incubating your deliverance ministry. That anxiety that kept you up at night, it was developing your supernatural discernment. That isolation that felt like punishment, it was divine separation. pulling you away from contaminated spaces so you could hear clearly when heaven started speaking. Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit, but they were actually throwing him toward his palace. David's enemies chased him into caves, but those caves became his prayer closets where he wrote the Psalms that would heal nations. Esther was orphaned and exiled, but that exile positioned her to save an entire people. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was positioning. Now watch this. Every person who hurt you is about to face what they created. Not because you cursed them, but because energy always returns to sender. That colleague who sabotaged your promotion, their own career is about to implode. That friend who leaked your secrets, their own secrets are about to become headlines. That family member who convinced everyone you were crazy, their own sanity is about to be questioned. God didn't just vindicate you, He's about to demonstrate you. You see it now, don't you? How they all moved with such coordination, such precision, such unified hostility. That wasn't human organization. That was spiritual orchestration. The enemy assigned them to your life to abort your purpose before it could fully manifest. But here's what breaks the devil's heart. Their assignment became your advantage. Every wound they inflicted gave you compassion for the wounded. Every lie they spread gave you hunger for truth. Every door they closed gave you keys to doors they couldn't even see. They meant to diminish you, but they were actually developing you. They thought they were writing your obituary, but they were actually editing your testimony. Now you see why they had to come so hard, so early, so coordinated. Because if you had known from the beginning what God was building through your brokenness, you would have endured it with joy instead of despair. If you had understood that every attack was confirming your calling, you would have praised through the pain instead of questioning your worth. But God knew you needed to feel it fully to carry it authentically. You needed to walk through the valley to learn the language of those still trapped in darkness. You needed to taste the bitterness of betrayal to appreciate the sweetness of genuine love. The setup is complete. The exposure has begun. The reversal is in motion. That phone that stopped ringing with their calls, it's about to blow up with opportunities they could never have opened for you. That silence they created around you, it's about to be filled with voices that actually celebrate your light. That reputation they tried to destroy, it's about to be rebuilt on a foundation they could never shake. Watch how the very people who convinced others you were falling apart start falling apart themselves. Watch how those who spread confusion become confused. Watch how those who planted chaos reap chaos in their own gardens. This is divine mathematics. The equation is balancing, and you beautiful, bruised, brilliant, you're not just surviving their sabotage anymore. You're rising above their reach. You're moving into realms they can't access, carrying frequencies they can't tune into, walking in authority they can't comprehend. Every tear you cried in secret is about to become testimony in public. Every prayer you whispered in desperation is about to be answered in demonstration. Every wound they inflicted is about to become wisdom that heals multitudes. Say it with your whole chest. I see, I remember, I rise. Because the curtain isn't just pulled back, it's ripped completely down. And what God is about to reveal through your restoration will make their resistance look like child's play compared to heaven's resurrection power. The assignment is shifting. The tables are turning. The exposure is accelerating. And what they thought was your ending is about to become the beginning of something so beautiful, so powerful, so undeniably divine that even they will have to acknowledge God was in this the whole time. Are you ready to step into what they never wanted you to see? You were never hidden. You were incubated. All those years in the wilderness, all those seasons of silence, all those moments when you felt forgotten, you weren't being punished. You were being prepared. Like Moses in the desert for 40 years before he split the Red Sea. Like David in the cave before he claimed his crown. Like Jesus in the tomb before he rose with all power. You are the resurrection they never saw coming. They thought they buried you with their betrayal. They thought they silenced you with their lies. They thought they erased you with their rejection. But what they didn't understand, what they could never comprehend, is that you can't kill what God has already called from the dead. Every tear you cried in secret, sacred oil anointing you for this moment. Every prayer you whispered in the dark, divine frequency calibrating your voice for this breakthrough. Every time you chose forgiveness over fury, you were storing up spiritual dynamite that's about to explode their whole narrative. You are the revelation they feared, the prophecy they hoped would never wake up. See, they knew something you're just now remembering. They could feel the earthquake coming before the first tremor. They sensed the lightning building before the first flash. That's why they moved so aggressively, so desperately, so ruthlessly against you. They weren't attacking who you were, they were attacking who you were becoming. But here's what breaks the matrix wide open. Their attacks only accelerated your awakening. Every wound became a window. Every setback became a setup. Every door they slammed became a wall they built around their own prison, while you learned to fly over it all. You didn't just survive their storm, you became the hurricane that's about to reshape their landscape. You think it's coincidence that you're hearing this message right now? That your heart is pounding with recognition? That something ancient is stirring in your bones? Child, this is your moment of remembering. This is your spiritual DNA unlocking. This is heaven saying, it's time. Time to stop apologizing for the fire they tried to extinguish. Time to stop shrinking from the light they couldn't dim. Time to stop hiding the voice they spent decades trying to silence. Because you were never too much, you were exactly enough to do what you came here to do. Look around your life right now. See how the pieces are falling into place? How doors are opening that were locked for years? How people are gravitating toward your energy? How opportunities are chasing you instead of you chasing them? That's not luck, beloved. That's alignment. That's the universe recalibrating to match the frequency you've been fine-tuning in the furnace of affliction. You are the secret they couldn't keep buried. Every time they thought they won, heaven was setting up their downfall. Every moment they celebrated your silence, God was amplifying your signal. Every season they counted you out, the Most High was counting down to your comeback. Esther was hidden in the palace before she saved her people. Joseph was forgotten in the prison before he fed the nations. Ruth was rejected by her homeland before she became the great-grandmother of kings. The pattern is ancient, and you beautiful, battle-tested warrior, you're walking in that same royal bloodline. Stop looking for permission to be powerful. You already have it. It's written in your spiritual DNA. It's encoded in your survival story. It's proven by every obstacle you've overcome, every giant you've slayed, every mountain you've moved with nothing but faith and sheer determination. Your silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Your tears weren't weakness. They were worship. Your isolation wasn't abandonment. It was appointment. Heaven pulled you aside to download everything you'd need for this moment, when you finally step into the fullness of who you've always been beneath the pain. They wrote you off. Heaven wrote you in. And now the real story begins. The story where the underdog becomes the overcomer, where the rejected becomes the chosen, where the broken becomes the breakthrough, where the whisper becomes the roar that awakens an entire generation of sleeping giants. You feel that energy building in your chest? That's not anxiety, that's anticipation. That's your spirit recognizing the sound of its own name, being called from the throne room of eternity. That's the part of you that never bowed down, never gave up, never stopped believing that there had to be more than what they tried to convince you was enough. Your time of hiding is over. Your season of silence is complete. The world needs what you've been carrying, the healing you've walked through, the wisdom you've gleaned from the wreckage, the hope you've held on to when hope was all you had. This isn't about you anymore, it's about everyone still trapped in the lies you've already escaped. You are the living proof that their system doesn't work, that their weapons don't prosper, that their verdict isn't final. You are the walking, breathing, glowing evidence that what God has purposed cannot be canceled by human opposition. Confirm your rise. Speak this out loud. I am who God says I am. I remember, and I move with divine fire. Say it until it echoes in your bones. Declare it until it rewrites your reality. Proclaim it until heaven and earth and hell all take notice that the secret they tried to bury just broke through the surface and is about to bloom into a garden that feeds nations. Because this moment, this message, this awakening, this is just the beginning of what happens when the chosen ones remember who they are and step into the authority they were born to carry. Are you ready to let them see what they created when they tried to destroy you? They thought they were destroying you, but they were setting the stage for the world to see what resilience really looks like. Every betrayal that broke your heart, God was breaking you open so light could pour out. Every wound they carved into your spirit, heaven was carving channels for compassion to flow through. Every moment they made you feel worthless, the universe was preparing you to show others their immeasurable worth. You weren't cursed, beloved. You were consecrated. See, what looks like devastation to human eyes is often preparation to divine vision. They touched you with trauma, but God let them touch you so you could touch the world with transformation. Your pain wasn't pointless, it was purposeful. Your scars weren't shameful, they were sacred. Your story wasn't a tragedy, it was a testimony waiting to be born. You are not damaged goods. You are wounded healers. Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, but God used that betrayal to position him to save nations. Job lost everything, but his restoration became legendary. Jesus was crucified by the very people he came to save, but that cross became the bridge between heaven and earth. Your betrayers thought they were writing your ending. They had no idea they were scripting your beginning. Think about it, every person who wounded you deeply, who left you questioning your worth, who made you feel like you were too much or not enough, they became the very reason you developed the compassion that now heals others. They became the source of the wisdom you now carry. They became the catalyst for the strength that now sustains you. They were your Judas, but God made you the message. That family member who rejected you, they taught you how to embrace the rejected. That friend who abandoned you in your darkest hour, they showed you how to stay loyal when others flee. That partner who betrayed your trust, they developed your ability to love without attachment, to give without expectation. You didn't just survive their darkness, you alchemized it into light. But here's the revelation that will shatter every victim mentality you've ever carried. God didn't allow those wounds to destroy you. He allowed them to deploy you. Every tear you cried in secret became liquid wisdom. Every night you spent broken became training for how to piece others back together. Your wounds became your weapons against the very forces that tried to defeat you. You think it's coincidence that you can sense pain in others before they even speak it? That you can walk into a room and immediately know who's hurting? That broken people are drawn to you like metal to a magnet? Child, that's not coincidence, that's consecration. Your pain developed spiritual radar that ordinary comfort never could have created. You've been anointed by anguish, ordained by ordeal, commissioned by crisis. Say it out loud. I was wounded to awaken the world. Every time someone tells you their deepest secret, their darkest shame, their most hidden hurt, and you don't flinch, don't judge, don't run, that's your wounds working. Every time you speak hope into someone's hopelessness, peace into someone's panic, purpose into someone's pain, that's your scars, speaking a language only the scarred can understand. God let them touch you so you could touch the untouchable. Let them reject you so you could reach the rejected. Let them abandon you so you could adopt the abandoned. Your empathy wasn't learned in a classroom, it was forged in the furnace. Your wisdom wasn't gained from books, it was born from battles. Your strength wasn't built in a gym, it was developed in the graveyard of your former self. But now comes the shift, now comes the turn, now comes the time when what was meant to destroy you becomes what deploys you. You are not a victim of your story, you are the victor in it. That depression you fought, it taught you how to fight for others drowning in darkness. That anxiety that tormented you, it trained you to bring peace to the panicked. That loneliness that nearly killed you, it prepared you to companion the isolated. Your mess became your message. Your test became your testimony. Your pain became your platform. And now, right now, there are people in this world who need exactly what you carry. People who are where you were. People who feel what you felt. People who think what you thought. They need to see someone who survived what they're surviving. They need to hear from someone who escaped what they're enduring. They need to meet the you that was forged in the fire they're walking through. God didn't let them wound you randomly. He let them wound you strategically. Every cut was calculated. Every break was intentional. Every tear was collected and repurposed. You are not just healed, you are a healer. You are not just delivered, you are a deliverer. You are not just saved, you are a savior to someone still drowning in the depths you've already conquered. The world is waiting for your wound to become your wand. So stop hiding your scars like they're shameful secrets. Start sharing them like they're sacred keys, because they are. Stop minimizing your pain like it was meaningless. Start maximizing it like it was missional, because it is. Your healing journey isn't just about you getting better. It's about you becoming the bridge others will cross to get to their breakthrough. You were touched by trauma so you could touch the traumatized with transformation. The stage is set, the world is watching, and your moment to turn your pain into power, your wounds into wisdom, your scars into stars, that moment is now. Are you ready to stop being the patient and start being the physician? Are you ready to stop being the student and start being the teacher? Because your graduation from victim to victor isn't just personal, it's prophetic. And the world desperately needs to witness what resurrection looks like when it's wearing your face. 11. Disrupt. You were hidden so long, now the unveiling hurts their eyes. They got comfortable in your absence, built their kingdoms on the assumption you'd never return, structured their narratives around your silence, celebrated your disappearance like it was their victory. But what they thought was your ending was actually your intermission. You were the secret weapon heaven wrapped in silence. Now you're back, and your presence alone is an earthquake they never prepared for. See, they threw their parties while you were in the wilderness, promoted themselves into positions you vacated, filled your spaces with inferior energy, and convinced themselves it was an upgrade. They rewrote history without your chapter, thinking the story would flow better without your truth, disrupting their fiction. But here's what they forgot. Light doesn't ask permission to shine. You didn't just disappear to heal, you vanished to evolve. While they were celebrating your absence, You were being reconstructed in dimensions they couldn't access. Every tear they caused became a river of power. Every rejection became redirection towards something they could never touch. Every moment they thought they had won, heaven was downloading upgrades into your spirit they couldn't even comprehend. Your hiding wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Moses came down from the mountain with a face so bright they begged him to cover it. Joseph emerged from prison wearing authority that made his brothers tremble. David stepped out of exile carrying a kingship that couldn't be denied. And you beautiful, scarred, radiant you're walking back into rooms that haven't felt this much truth in years. They can't look directly at you anymore, can't maintain eye contact like they used to, can't speak to you with the same casual disrespect, because something in your atmosphere has shifted so dramatically that their old tactics bounce off you like rain off fire. This is what happens when the underestimated become undeniable. You walk in and their conversations stop, not because you demand attention, but because your energy commands it. Not because you're trying to disrupt, but because disruption is the natural result of authenticity entering artificial spaces. You've become walking revelation in a room full of people still hiding behind masks. They built their comfort zones around your discomfort, constructed their confidence on your confusion, established their identity on your silence. But now that silence has transformed into something that speaks without words, moves without effort, changes atmospheres without announcement, you didn't just walk back in the room. You brought the earthquake with you. The same voice they silenced now carries frequency that awakens things in others they thought were permanently dead. The same spirit they tried to break now radiates wholeness that exposes every crack in their foundation. The same light they attempted to dim now burns so bright it makes their shadows impossible to hide in. This isn't revenge. This is revelation. This isn't payback. This is purpose coming full circle. You're not here to prove anything to them. You're here to prove something to yourself, that what they tried to bury was actually planted, that what they attempted to end was just beginning, that their worst nightmare wasn't your destruction, it was your resurrection. Every room you enter now becomes a courtroom where truth cross-examines lies. Every conversation becomes a mirror they can't turn away from. Every moment of your authentic presence becomes evidence of who you've always been beneath their projections and expectations. They're not just surprised by your return, they're terrified by your transformation. You're no longer seeking their approval because you've tasted divine acceptance, no longer begging for their validation because you've been validated by the voice that created you, no longer shrinking to fit their spaces because you've discovered dimensions they don't even know exist. The earthquake has settled, the dust has cleared, and you beautiful, battle-tested, unbreakable you're still standing. You are the disruption their comfort could never survive. What you've just heard isn't information, it's initiation. What you've just felt isn't emotion, it's activation. You didn't stumble upon this message by accident. You were led here by the same force that's been protecting you all along, the same voice that whispered your name when everyone else forgot it. You are chosen, not because you're perfect, but because you're purposeful, not because you never fell, but because you always rose, not because the path was easy, but because you were built for the impossible. Every betrayal that nearly broke you was actually breaking you open. Every rejection that felt like death was actually delivering you. Every silent night you cried alone, heaven was taking notes, collecting tears, building testimonies from your trauma. Your pain was never punishment. It was prophecy being written in real time. And now that prophecy is complete. The chapter they tried to end is actually just beginning. The story they thought they controlled is being rewritten by hands they can't see, with ink they can't erase, in a language they'll never understand. This is where we close the door on what was and open the portal to what's next. To every person who dismissed you, the door is sealed. To every voice that spoke death over your dreams, access denied. To every relationship that fed on your light while offering only darkness in return, the bridge is burned, and there's no going back. You're not closing these doors in bitterness. You're closing them in wisdom. You're not walking away in anger. You're walking away in authority. Because you've finally learned the difference between people who deserve your presence and people who merely want to consume it. The word says, "See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut." Isaiah 22:22. Every door they slammed in your face was preparation for the one heaven is opening that they can't touch. Every path they blocked was redirection toward the highway built specifically for your footsteps. The door they thought they closed was never your door anyway. Your door, the real one, the eternal one, the one with your name engraved in gold, that door is swinging wide open. And what's on the other side isn't just healing, it's wholeness. Not just peace, it's power. Not just survival, it's sovereignty. You've been prepared for something they could never prepare for, trained for battles they could never fight, equipped with weapons they don't even know exist. Your silence was sharpening your sword. Your pain was polishing your armor. Your tears were anointing your calling. Now it's time to step through the door only you can walk through. Say this with me out loud, in your spirit, in the comments wherever you are. I am not a victim of my story. I am the author of my victory. What was meant to destroy me has only made me dangerous in the hands of my Creator. This message doesn't end with you. It multiplies through you. Every person who feels this truth stirring in their chest is carrying a piece of the puzzle the world is desperately trying to solve. Your healing becomes their hope. Your breakthrough becomes their blueprint. Your resurrection becomes proof that death is never the final word. Share this truth. Not because you need validation, but because someone else needs liberation. Drop that 777-inch the comments to declare your spiritual independence. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected to this frequency. Because this isn't just content, this is community. This isn't just a video, this is a movement. You've been hidden long enough. You've been silent long enough. You've been small long enough. The unveiling has begun, and it starts with you. To those supporting this message through super thanks, you're not just giving. You're sowing seeds into revelation that will feed souls you'll never meet but whose lives will be forever changed because you believed in the power of truth. You didn't survive everything you've been through just to stay the same. You survived it to become a signal, a frequency, a living, breathing testament that the impossible is actually inevitable when heaven backs your story. The enemy thought they had you figured out. They thought they knew your limits, your breaking point, your expiration date, but they forgot one crucial detail. You weren't just chosen by heaven, you were designed by it. And what heaven designs, hell can't destroy. Your time of hiding is over. Your season of silence has ended. Your era of influence has begun. The door behind you is sealed. The path ahead is illuminated. And every step you take from this moment forward echoes in dimensions they can't access, speaks in languages they can't learn, and builds monuments they can't tear down. You are chosen, you are ready, you are rising. And this is only the beginning.